Many South Africans are turning to ride-hailing, or rather e-hailing, as a lucrative side hustle, with companies like Uber, Bolt and inDrive offering flexible earning opportunities. Now, with the industry projected to reach 8.11 billion rand by 2029, well, that's according to Statista. Luyanda Jafta, CEO of Fleetleash, will be able to share expert insights on how to navigate this competitive space and also to maximize earnings as a ride-hailing driver. Well, welcome to Africa Side Hustle, Luyanda. And just to get into the conversation, what is e-hailing, most especially to people who don't understand the industry? What is e-hailing and how can one get into that industry?
Got you. Hi, Prudence. So e-hailing is the industry that upsets all of the taxi guys, right?
Yeah.
Primarily, it's a means for us to get from point A to point B using our technologies like telephones or cell phones and using an app, right? Either Uber, Bolt, inDrive, like you mentioned. Right, that's primarily e-hailing. You know, it's the taxi, but in the modern era.
Okay, so how does Fleetly come into this industry now?
My wife and I say my wife now, we started as fiance, right? Last year, while going through a very tough season, we had some cars that we put onto Uber, renting them out to drivers. And we'd rent them out for 2.5 per week, and it looked like good money, but we were always running at a loss when we measured the maintenance and all of those things. We then got a third car, and that third car I went and drove it in December and January. After driving it, one of the things we picked up was there's an underutilization of the asset. Two, I was never home. For December holidays, my wife complained all the time that I don't see you. And three, the biggest problem is petrol. So what we as Fleetly devised was a mechanism where we place drivers on a shift system. We hire them on a full-time basis, meaning they now have a pay slip. So if they want to buy a car, they can buy a car. Because that's the biggest problem. That's why they have such exploitative rent-to-own schemes out in the market, because the drivers can't access vehicles, number one. And then two, the car makes a lot more. Our cars make between 60 and 90,000 rand per month, when the industry standard is closer to 30,000, because our vehicles rotate around the clock, right? And three, the drivers have petrol. They're very happy. They're extremely happy they have petrol. We provide the petrol, and we enable them to be able to do their job without concern for the petrol, right? We recently added medical aid and life insurance to their employment contracts, because I think it's very hard to build for an industry that you've never worked in. It's very scary driving an Uber. Driving an Uber in December and January was terrifying for me, right? But from that, we learned what actually the industry needs. And then we opened it up to the general public. And we said, listen, we can manage your cars for you so that you don't have to worry about maintenance and all of those things, because all of us want to buy an Uber and make part-time income and think it's a passive income.
Yeah.
As soon as you buy that car, you will realize very quickly that managing an Uber vehicle is nothing near part-time. Driver will call you at 2 a.m. They've been stopped by police officers or something, right? That needs to get fixed, or something has broken. Middle of the night, you have to figure out how to get it sorted. So we said, listen, let's manage it for vehicle owners. Take a small 5% fee of the earnings they earn for the month and leave them with more than they would have gotten if they're managing the cars themselves.
Yeah. So talking about vehicle owners, can the vehicle owner be able to drive their own car, or rather do you guys employ people to be able to drive people's cars?
It's a yes to both those questions, in the interesting way. So firstly, we employ the drivers on a full-time basis. Okay. We run them through a vigorous recruitment process. I mean, from the 1,000-odd people who've applied on our platform to become drivers, we've only ever employed 30. Because it's quite a rigorous process. It's a very informal industry where people are not interested in doing the right things. So finding good people is really hard. That's number one. But two, owners can actually drive their own cars. In fact, what we're doing now is that because we've had pay slips for a few drivers, right? We're applying for financing so that they can put their vehicle in. It can earn them income when they are resting, meaning that other drivers are driving, and it can create 3 extra jobs.
Yes. So companies like Bolt and also inDrive, how do drivers be able to balance their income for them to be able to make a profit?
From our end, looking at all of the platforms, right? A lot of drivers do cross-platform functioning, right? They try to get income on all of the platforms. We've chosen to focus on one. We focus on one platform primarily because of its safety, its disposition to safety, which is Uber, right? And then because of the system we're working, what we enable drivers to do is to work only those hours that they are required during the day, and then try to give as much benefit as possible, train them to get to a level where they are earning the income they want. You know, one of the crazy stats is that the take home for most Uber drivers or e-hailing drivers, less than 5% make more than 10,000 Rand a month. Less than 5%. One of the beautiful things we saw in her second month, she took home 13,000 Rand, one of our drivers, right? Yeah. And another driver took off 10,000 this month, and a few other drivers, right? And what we have seen is that if people follow the process that we're trying to do, we can get those earnings quite high, save on petrol, and we measure everything with regards to that. So yes, drivers can maximize their incomes with focus instead of diversification of platforms.
Yeah. The South African government has actually implemented certain regulations sometime in May in terms of strengthening regulations within the industry. So what role does it actually play in this industry?
So the biggest dilemma you're always dealing with any arm of government, right? Especially legislature. It's not the writing of the laws, it's the implementing of them, right? Yeah. So for example, one of the biggest problems that you'll face as an e-hailing driver is the risk of impounding, right? Because you don't have an operator license. But then the departments can't issue operator licenses. So I think more than having legislature, right, we have to have effective systems that work in all the arms of government. That would be far more effective than anything else. And, you know, the e-hailing industry is very much a cowboy industry, but it is sort of self-correcting and regulating, right? Because at the end of the day, we're all just trying to make an income, you know? We're all just trying to put food on our table and be functional members of society. The best thing that government can do is enable those efforts, not stifle them. I think there was a letter written by the Gauteng Department of Transport, if I'm not mistaken, where they said, look, we're suspending all impounding, right? One of my drivers actually just today, before the interview, got stopped by a traffic cop wanting to impound their car. He had to show the traffic officer the letter from the department, right? Yeah. Which is a sign of a lack of implementation that goes through all of the spheres of government.
Yeah, so you say that drivers earn based on their trips with no fixed income. So can you just explain more into that?
We set targets for each driver, right? Depending on the type of vehicle. I'll use an Ertiga or an XL vehicle. We'd say, listen, you've got a 7-seater vehicle. You've got a target today of 1,500 Rand in trips, right? Of that 1,500 Rand, we'll provide you 500 Rand for petrol, and 500 Rand is yours, and 500 Rand goes to the owner. It's as simple as that, right? And then based on how they perform from the whole month, that's the value of their salary.
Yeah. And just before I let you go, ensuring the driver's safety. How do you ensure the driver's safety? Not only the drivers, but also passengers.
100%. So we actually install cameras on all of our vehicles, inside and out. We manage that process fully. Number one. Two, we only operate on Uber. It's got the lowest incident rate because the security measures are so tight. In fact, we use the Uber mechanism of identifying drivers to shortlist our list of drivers, right? Yeah. So that the drivers have already done the fingerprint checks and all of those things. They do even driver evaluations before you can drive Uber. People don't know this, right? It's the most secure of the e-hailing platforms. That's number one. Number two, because we run a fleet, Uber tells us directly if there's any complaint from any passenger. And then we take those complaints, take them to the drivers. We've got a very strict policy that if you endanger, harm, or do anything towards a passenger, you're out the door, you know.
And just one more question. How many interviews do you do a day?
Yeah, so 10 on a typical day, 10 interviews. I mean, we've had 1,000 people apply. We do about 10 interviews a day of drivers. That's all I do all day long, most of the time, and then spend the evenings with my wife being very unhappy doing the administration, you know.
Well, that's it that we'll have on the show for today. And that was Luyanda Jafta, the CEO of Fleetly, just talking about South Africa's ride-hailing market, which has grown over the past several years with no signs of slowing down. And as we conclude today's episode, remember that Africa's entrepreneurial spirit is unstoppable. Share your hustle story with us on social media using hashtag #AfricaSideHustle. And don't forget to subscribe for more entrepreneurial stories, business news and insights on CNBCAfrica.com. Till next week.